it starts acting up, just turn it off.
Okay.
I think it's recording now, I'm not sure.
As soon as Kathy gets set up, we'll get started.
Just trying to keep everything under control.
Debbie, can you look at the front screen of that thing and see if it looks like it's recording?
Go ahead and look in.
There's a red dot right here, so I bet it is.
It's worse than all. It really is.
Come on in.
You need to get by me?
No, not yet.
There's Steve. Hey, there. How's everybody? Steve? Okay. Roger.
Keys and Kevin.
Morning.
We split duties today.
Everything working today?
I think.
Hey, Larry.
Morning, Alex. How you doing?
Okay, Kathy's ready. We'll call this meeting to order. Notice all are present with the exception of the chair, Mr. Moore, who gave us notification that he would not be able to be here today. And the news media has been duly notified. I did get a request that maybe we could move the financial report ahead of exigent business. Is that all right with everybody? Okay, so we will turn it over to Alex and Larry.
Okay, thank you. That's super.
You started calling me Bo, didn't you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is our revised end of the year statement, and also our month in January 31st. As you can remember, we lacked the numbers on True. We wanted to reconcile the numbers on the Commodities Opportunity Fund. Let's kind of start here in the bottom right box, shaded light blue, December 2011 restated. Our prior report, we were up 1.72%, minor adjustment upward. We almost got to 2% for the year, 1.96%. This is reconciled both from Prudential's number, which we'll talk about a little bit later, as well as the Goldman Sachs Commodities Opportunity Fund, which I think we got in January, but it was a verbal. So we wanted to reconcile that. You can also see we restated our fourth quarter and then our since inception annualized return, which is the inception date that we started working with the Little Rock Police Plan. So that pretty much sums up the year 2011. We didn't quite
But
get.
just to clarify, that is the gross number, not net.
That is the gross
correct?
number, yes, and I will get you the net number, but that is the gross number. We also had the revision at the top, once we got that number, in our, I guess that's kind of a brownish or grayish tan average effective rate of return from 86 through 11 up there to a 7.3% adjustment. Prior year it was 7.52. So we lost about 22 basis points there since the 86 numbers. Now, mind you, we can't obviously reconcile all those numbers prior to when we took over, but it was the numbers that were given to us here by the financial officer at the time that dated back to that. And I know that Ferris, all of y'all refer back to that number quite a bit. And we feel pretty comfortable with the prior managers that that's correct. Now any questions on that? I know that that's always kind of a catch up in the second month of the year from the first, once we get all the numbers from our alternative investments. Any questions on the end of 2011 numbers? Okay, top right hand box, close the month, 43,150, 312.38, little accrued interest. If you notice at the bottom of our footnotes, we made withdrawals of $1,497,000. Kathy, it's yeah. We had what, $1 million in drop?
Close to.
Close to
yeah.
it. So that was a drop withdrawal, which reflects at the top 23,869,606. So we had a little bit more of a substantial withdrawal in a month than we've had previously due to drop withdrawals. So that reflected in the balance, although we had a very good month. So let's turn to the left-hand box there for the month of January. We were up 2.67. We were pretty close to our index blend of 297. In 1 year restated there, January of 11 to January of 12, 392 versus 240. and our cents annualized then to 645, an adjustment with the January month over the 606 of the previous month. So all in all, a very, very pleasant experience in January, and it's continued into February. You know, in our business, we're always cautious when things look too good. We're probably overcautious when things look pretty bad. Things are looking better. Numbers are showing some improvements. Employment numbers, obviously, over the last 3 months. I did not get the numbers for claims this morning on the jobs front, but they're expecting another good number. But again, everything kind of hinges on the situation in continental Europe. There was a little bit more of a positive reaction this morning on the Greece situation, but that changes by the hour and the day and the week. So we're still being cautious from that standpoint. We've seen interest rates peak up a little bit here over the last couple of trading days since last week, and you would expect more of that if they find a solution over there to kick the can further down the road. I don't think it's a permanent solution, but it's a solution to improve things over there. Earnings-wise, we've had a little bit of a disappointment so far in the fourth quarter earnings numbers, but overall not bad. Probably to be expected a little bit, but when you look at the S&P 500 earnings, we're probably down just a little bit over what was expected from the estimate standpoint, and that's something we always watch. So all in all, and if you update this, we've got a couple more percentage points to add. I didn't get the reconciled number this morning, but we've had started off with gangbusters in the month of February. You know, we're around 44-45% equity exposure, which, you know, we may tick that up a little bit. I'd like to see a little, what we call a digestive period in the equity market to be able to do that and not buy into the high level and then take the dip. And I think probably 6 weeks of market appreciation now that we've been running pretty fast and furious, we're probably due for a little bit of a pullback here. And if we do, then we may add a little bit more of the equity exposure, but we're going to be real careful in doing that. Because of the drop balance, again, same old story. We have to be cautious in that regard. Larry, do you have anything to add on the broad market?
No, sir.
Okay. Let's flip over. The next page, just FYI, we have a maturity, JP Morgan Chase. We had a maturity last month in the Goldman Sachs position, which was a half a million. We've got another maturity on 3/15/12, the JP Morgan Chase corporate. We will apply that again to the fixed income unless we ramp up a little bit on the equity side, but that's yet to be determined. Really nothing else on these. We can talk about these in our review, which I'll talk about here under a later format. Let's go to the pie chart, last page before Roman number 1. This breaks it pretty much down. We're roughly at about 45%, just under on the equity. That also gives us the international exposure, the mild international exposure, which we'll be watching carefully as well. The other is the real estate with Prudential, the mezzanine with Capital Point, and the Goldman Sachs Capital Opportunity Fund, which is roughly just under 20%. And you see our fixed and separate fixed accounts, corporates and govies, and then the cash position, which we've been keeping a little bit lower. Obviously, we had to raise cash due to the drop situation, so we tried to keep as much money invested as possible during the month of January and February. We made a mild investment. If you look up in value, in the box up around 11 o'clock, we made a small investment in Federated Strategic Value Dividend Fund. It's a very, what I consider a contrarian play to value, large cap value, in that the fund invests very little in financials. But we did do that for some extra income purposes, about 1.5%. We'll be watching that carefully. It's worked real well so far, even though we've seen more on the growth side in the first month and a half in the equity market. International remains at 4.31%, up to around 10 o'clock on the dial. We may be ramping that up a little bit, but mainly, I say mainly, pretty much across the board on emerging markets, not in developed markets in continental Europe. And then down at the bottom, you see our sector REIT and oil and gas at 14.78%. Continues to be good. Remember, we sold a couple of the MLP Energies back in January and added it to a MLP fund, and that's worked out pretty well for us because the ones we've sold have continued to drag a little bit. But that we still like that sector very much for income as well as growth. Any questions on the pie chart? The one change probably to look at is that we may ramp up this equity piece just a little bit especially if we get just a mild pullback before hopefully another run up in this first quarter on the equity side. How much? I'd say 3%, no more. We go from 45 to maybe 48, 47 and a half. It'll be mild. It won't be big. It'll be mainly on the growth side, not on the value side.
So, we are at 44.88 on total equity
Yes, sir.
exposure, so
Yes.
that would lower it to about what?
No, it'll raise it.
It'll raise it.
It'll raise it to about 47, 48% initially. And we'll do it on, Ferris, we'll do it on the growth side. So up here in mid-growth and small growth, you know, one thing that helped us a bunch is small value and small growth at 4% and 5% respectively have been the hot segments, asset classes so far in the start of this year, double-digit returns. I mean, they're up 1167 on growth and 1061 on value, small value and small growth. Those were the two areas that really got, well, small value got really hurt badly in the last quarter last year, last 2 quarters of last year. So they've made the biggest rebound. We don't want to chase that too much, but we may add a little bit there. Okay. Let's go to Roman number 2. And this is, I think we've already talked about this a little bit, but we went ahead and put this back in for 12/31/2011. Down at the top, we won't spend a whole lot of time on fixed income, but I will tell you our fixed income component, Goldman Sachs Strategic Income, which was down 2.16% last year, is already up equivalent about 2.09% this year. So it's made a turnaround. That was our one problem child last year. And the market, fixed income market's working a little bit more to its benefit, probably a little bit more here in the last couple of trading days because they're not in the quality range as far as treasuries. So it's probably worked to their benefit, especially as how they're positioned. PIMCO total return has bounced back nicely. They had a good last quarter of last year. They're up about 2.5% so far this year. So fixed income, although I see some of that light being taken off of them over the next couple of months, especially if continental Europe solves some of its problems. Our corporates are pretty much in place. Obviously, we still had the Goldman Sachs when this report was done. And as I mentioned, JP Morgan will mature the 15th of March.
Hey, Alan.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a second. I know I was in the wrong place because I was confused when he said 2, and that looks like it's the Goldman Sachs Capital Point Partners. It's behind tab 1.
Yeah, I'm sorry, tab
two.
number 1. Sorry. I look at it as
Just
tab
wanna make
2.
sure
We
everybody was in
don't
the right
have a
place.
tab.
Well,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure everybody was in the right
Sorry
place.
about that. This is my blue and white page. I apologize on that. Under other, real estate, PRISA, nice quarter, 3.28%. For the year, 19.08%. Little conversation there, a little color on that group. They still feel very good going into 2012, but not that good. I'd say 8 to 10% total return expected for the year at the best. So you're going to see a little bit of a pullback there, but all in all, they've done a nice job. They've taken in some new money. You know, everything's different from what it was, 2.5 years ago, Larry. And I think their allocation's been spot on, so I'm very happy with that. Goldman Sachs Commodities Opportunity Fund into the year up 3.89%. It was slightly down in the month of December. We're expecting a pretty good month in January, but that's a verbal. Haven't seen a number yet, so that's not in your January number. That drags a little bit. It's a little bit later. But all in all, it's working for us. And with things ramping up, I think commodities still is going to be a good place for our position, which is a little bit less than 4%. Capital Point, we've got a little bit of we had a management change there. Larry and I are planning on having them in for the March meeting.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Y'all remember our mezzanine finance manager out of Houston, Texas. Jeff Sanglis was the person that did most of the talking here during the course of that last presentation. He's the guy that Alex and I had the most confidence in that organization. He called us last week and notified us that he's accepted a job in Dallas with another organization. And so we think that's a material change as it relates to that management team. And we would like for them to come back and visit with us maybe in March and let you guys hear with us what's happening with them. I will tell you, a manager change inside of a retail fund is kind of easy because if we don't like the fund, we can sell it. A mezzanine fund like this is does not have the same kind of liquidity component. And because Jeff was the person that we had relied on and had the most communication with his departure, we just think that that's prudent. So with your permission, we'd like to request the latitude to invite him to come to our next investment committee meeting, and let's spend some time and hear what's going on with their organization, how they feel about the valuations of their current positions. I've asked some of those questions, but I'd like for you guys to hear them directly. As with any kind of illiquid investment, it's really hard to mark the market. In other words, it's really hard to know what the value of it is. They can make an estimate, but only after you sell it do you really know what it is. And what I'm being told is that they've got some that haven't done too well. They've got some that they expect to exit to make a couple of times their money. So that's the way that business goes. I don't think there's anything unique about what they're communicating as far as valuations, but I do think the manager change warrants a review.
So Larry, if the fund decided that maybe they didn't want to continue with Capital Point Partners, what really would the options be, and how would we go about exiting it, and how long would that potentially take?
Well, let's talk about where we are with it. What did they commit to us on the outset? I think the timing of when we bought that fund was really good, all right, because we bought it when credit was really tight. So I have to feel like our entry point into that part of the market was strong. You ask a good question. You mean if they just decided they wanted to get out of the fund altogether, just close the business? Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm saying if the police pension fund did not want to continue with Capital Point Partners.
Well, there's not, as I stated a second ago, just like we were talking about, the valuation of the securities are difficult to price because there's not an efficient secondary market. Y'all know what I mean when I say second? In other words, there's not an immediate market to show what the price is. And so there are groups that buy investments like that, but we would not enjoy that process. All right, because typically there's a significant discount, and I've seen them range widely, but the most typical number is a 40% discount. All right, so I don't think that, and I'm not advocating this, all right, but if we were placed in that position, that's what you see occur in the marketplace. We don't know that that's even a meritable question at this point, because we don't know, one party leaving doesn't change the entire organization. But it's not a huge organization, and when I appreciated Jeff reaching out and calling us, I was a little disappointed that the fund didn't call me first. I'll get over that. But Mr. Sanglis said that the reason that he left is because the group that he was joining had more money, and I don't know if y'all remember this, but taking more time on this than I intended, but Capital Point was also they were trying to raise an additional fund, and we had told them no. We had all we needed. Thank you. I think raising that additional fund had gone slower than they wanted. Jeff wanted to manage more money, and he had a better opportunity, so he left for what was good for his family. He still has his own money invested in this fund, and so he told me he was going to continue to be involved in trying to make sure that we exit on good terms. I meant to make a point a moment ago. We were told on the outset that this is a 5 to 7 year commitment. Okay, we have now been in there. We're approaching our 5th year. Okay, so I would expect to see some exits on some of these positions in the near term. I would also, not just because of the timeline, but also because of what's happening in the market. Credit's starting to get a little bit looser. There's some other opportunities for mezzanine financing is expensive money, and so if a company's paying 12% or 10% or 8%. And they can go to the bank and get it now for 4 or 5, then that's what they try to do. And so I would have to think a couple of factors are moving in our favor. But, rather than assuming, I'd like to ask those kinds of questions to those individuals at this end of the table with you guys getting here the same answers we hear. Any questions about that?
You were talking about the next board meeting?
Yes, sir.
Have them here?
Yes, sir.
And y'all gonna be asking the questions?
Yes, sir.
I wouldn't know what to ask them.
Well, we do, all right, and you'll get to see the kind of questions we ask when we're in private, all right, because and I want them on record. This is a material change, y'all. I mean, Alex and I's point person that we relied on, had confidence in, and based some of our decisions on, is not there, all right. And so I need to know who the number 2 person is, and I need to know if they can answer the same kind of questions Jeff did in the same capacity.
Do you have any feelings that you're not going to get the same attention as we got with the other guy?
Not after our meeting.
Okay. I mean, now?
We're gonna,
Why you want to have these questions?
I have reservations because, my top guy left. I didn't get a call, and that doesn't feel good, all right? I mean, we got money. Alex and I are used to being treated, I mean, in our world, you know, we're the client. We're picking these guys, and so if they care about what you think, they stay in touch with you, and they've not been particularly responsive about this, and that's concerning to me. And so normally I wouldn't put them in front of a client and ask these questions, but this time I'm trying to send a different message.
I think it'd be beneficial.
I do too.
I got your new year-to-date number, 4.28%. I knew if I bugged them long enough, they'd get it to me.
Alex, what is that number?
4.28% through last night is what the plan's up. So I'll lay another, what, 2+%? Almost 2+% in the first 8 or 9 days of February. So
As Alex said a moment ago,
it's a little hot.
if Europe gets better and the unemployment numbers improve, you're gonna wish you had more equity. That's just the way the market's pushing us. And it's one of those times where you ride the wind. I mean, you got a tailwind, so you get in front of it and enjoy it.
It's important to know, though, isn't it, that we just don't know what's going to happen around over there and
Oh, man.
all of
Can
that.
change in a moment.
You know.
In fairness, I'm not even sure the information that we get is 100% accurate. You know, so I think it's prudent to be reasonable about our allocation and cautious here.
On the equity
By the
side, under money market there on our recap, you know, and obviously this was through the other 2 days ago, but these numbers are significant. You're seeing double-digit returns, mid-6%, 7% returns on a lot of the equity managers. Our dividend interest and premium strategy up there, NFJ is already up 11% for the year. You know, so I will tell you, active managers are a little bit more in line with index managers right now, at least the start of the year. How long that holds up, I don't know. International at the bottom of the page is up double-digit returns. Vanguard Emerging Markets is up 15.67. It was down about 1868, as you can see, last year. So a huge ramp up already in equity returns. I think there's some rotation going on there too from fixed income, and I think people that have some cash on the sidelines have put a little money to work in the first of the year. But let's not get caught up in all the positives. You've still got to look. There's several negatives, big negatives on the table, Ferris, and that's what we have to look at. And I think we've got a little digestive period ahead of us. Sector oil and gas, we sold El Paso Pipeline, we sold ETP, Energy Transfer Partners, we sold New Star, and we took half off the table of Williams Pipeline. But the remaining stocks are up anywhere from 2 to 4 to 6% year to date, and they're paying a great dividend. So that's kind of our sweet spot for a little safety standard there too. Not directly tied to the energy prices, it's more of the infrastructure, pipeline, storage, transmission, especially in the U.S. So we still like that space, and we watch that very carefully. Any questions on the managers? No manager changes right now. Goldman Sachs Mid-Cap Value is the one that I've got my eyes on. I was really hard on them at the end of the year. They're already up almost 10% year to date. So I'm going to keep my eyes on that. But mid-cap value's been a tough space, but it's rallied really nice start of the year. Okay. Behind Roman numeral 2 now, finally get there, is our snapshot reports for PRISA. Not going to spend a whole lot of time here. I told you in the last quarter they were up 3.28%. They invested almost $500 million in new assets during the fourth quarter. If you break down their yearly returns, 1908, about 5.5 of that was income, the rest appreciation. Very good numbers. I will tell you, they were shocked that they almost did 20% last year. I think their recipe last year, start of the year, was maybe 10 to 12%. It was much better. They've made some investments. They disposed of one down at the bottom of the page. You'll see in the last paragraph, Piney Point, which is down in Houston, Texas, generated proceeds of $14.9 million. Had an IRR of 5% over a 6-year hold period. Not bad, Larry.
I like that.
Yeah, I'd like to find a bunch of those. Leverage ratio was really unchanged. It had a decline of about 79 basis points, so no new leverage there. That's something we always look at. But again, I think 2012, look for 8, 10, maybe 12% at best returns based on their synopsis currently. Next page, Commodity Opportunities Fund, as I mentioned, they were slightly down in the month of December. This is your year in 2011. We do not have yet in the number our January number, although they tell us it should be pretty strong. Down 0.75% in the month of December, up 389 versus an index that was down basically almost double digits. So they did their job. We're very pleased with Goldman based on what they're doing. I think the one thing that hurt them in December was their precious metal holdings. The strong point was Agri. I think metals, obviously, in January has been much better unless they reverse course, and I don't think they did. So that's why I think their January number will be a little bit better. And if the economy continues to show some improvement, and continental Europe doesn't just melt down, and there are signs that the German economy is a little bit better than what everybody estimated at this point, then I think it bodes well for any commodities fund going forward. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much it for the review of January and year-end 2011. Open it up to questions.
When do you expect to get the fourth quarter number for the commodity?
Oh, we got fourth quarter.
Okay.
We don't have January's number.
You don't have January?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yeah, fourth quarter is built in the number.
Okay.
I would expect to see probably more drop requests coming in, and I'll tell you why. Because the markets are starting to show some confidence, and the salesmen out there are showing these kinds of numbers we just talked about in January, and so they're talking about there should be an opportunity for you to get your money invested and participate, etc. So they didn't do very well. Most of those guys that are soliciting hadn't had very good period in the last 3 years. The markets are improving, and so out there selling their wares again. And so I would expect you to, I'm just making a point of reference, I would expect you to hear more annuity presentations to retirees, and some of these funds will move. Ferris, you agree with that?
And they are,
They're getting hit pretty hard.
they're starting to come in.
If the market keeps, that's usually what happens. If the market gets good, we start losing.
They forget the downside, Ferris. They've enjoyed a 0% protection here during this market environment, which we've handled very nicely. And now the market's moving, and so they'll go out and they'll learn a lesson again, and they'll be able to come back.
Well, I think it's important to say too that we have had drop members who have moved their money based on what you just said.
Yes, sir.
A salesman out here selling the upside of the market and maybe not emphasizing the potential downside, and there's several that has regretted doing that.
Yes, sir.
For very good reason.
Yes, sir.
So there is something to be said for safety and modest but moderate growth.
That 0% floor that you have on your plan cannot be overstated, and it's discounted when people are looking at the upside. But you don't have to look very far back to realize that there was a period when they didn't have that kind of protection in outside investments. Okay. Questions of us?
Before you leave, we do want to talk about scheduling of pension board meetings. And this is listed under the agenda under y'all, but I just wanted to make the point that when Jenny and I talked, Jenny is their assistant that puts these reports together at the end of the year, we had talked about how difficult it is at the first of the year to get accurate numbers so quickly. And we had talked about potentially moving the January meeting to the third Thursday, but following that, and recognizing the number of conflicts that the city manager has had with the second Thursday and his other board that he serves on, the discussion came up about the potential of moving all the meetings to the third Thursday. Just as an update, I did talk with the city manager, and that really does work to his advantage. He will have to be absent from the March meeting if we don't make the decision to move it to the third Thursday. So I wanted to make sure, first of all, that that's something that y'all could work into your schedule as the board considers that.
Yes. You're the client.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
No problem.
and now, I'll open that up for y'all's discussion. And
That's fine with me. Third Thursday work with me, Greg. Works for me.
does that work for everybody? Do we need so do we need a motion and a second to do that?
Make a motion. Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. So our meeting in March will move to the third Thursday, and we'll have Kathy put out a new
Yeah.
schedule
Yes.
for that in March of the remainder of the year.
Yeah.
Always third Thursday, okay.
Right.
I'll mark up my calendar.
Well, thanks for letting us go first this morning.
Thank you very much.
We got a full day.
To the checking account on this.
Yes.
From our account to the checking. Thanks, Shel.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, exigent business.
Y'all got Bo working.
He's in Cabot. He's staying in the residential community.
We was in Cabot.
Oh,
That means he's
he was in the Queen earlier. I mean, the boy's moving all over.
That's a Queen trip, is it? That's a long one.
Alex and I used to make those trips. Now we got Bo doing them. Don't put that on the record.
You have to give him hazard pay going down there.
Rookie.
That's exactly right.
Queen's a pretty exciting place, I understand.
Drive back in the middle of the night, it's a lot of fun. See y'all. Y'all have a good rest of the week.
Probably hear Bo talking about that now.
Yeah, it is.
He's so loud. He gets his point across.
Okay, exigent business. Was there any exigent business? Okay, we'll move to the next item, approval of the January minutes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have one small change, that amendment that I would offer. It would be on, starting on line 122.
Of what page?
That, well, I think they're all individual. That would be page 3.
Page 3. And I don't have line numbers on mine, so can you tell us which section?
Yeah, they're hid in the,
Oh, sorry.
Yes, go down to section C.
Uh-huh.
At the very bottom of the page, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth line down
Okay.
in section C.
Okay.
And if it starts with the first sentence, which is in quotation, and it's dealing with a statement that I had made, and it basically quotes, I was rather disappointed in the explanation referring to the explanation of the CPA letter regarding you, Madam Chairman. Continuing in the explanation, but I feel it is time to move forward. If I could simply offer an amendment, which I had previously offered, and I think this morning's election, just to simply say, not in quotation, but to simply say, starting with that same sentence, actually starting with the sentence just above that where it says Mr. Hensley stated, to simply say, as I had emailed previously to the board members, Mr. Hensley stated he was rather disappointed in the explanation, but thought it was time to move on. And I think narrative form, because this quote is not entirely accurate, I know it was intended to be, but quite frankly, as I was saying that sentence, somebody scuffed something, laid it on the table, and there were 2 or 3 words that was totally inaudible, and I did not say, but I feel. No big deal, it's just a simple little change which basically reflects the same
So
thing.
you're moving that we make that
Yes, I am.
amendment?
Yes, ma'am.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so can we have a,
So let me be clear, you don't want that quoted now?
I never did want it quoted. I had emailed you, Steve, and offered specifically what I just said.
Well, it was a statement made for the record, and I assume that when you make a statement for the
No,
record,
actually, I didn't ask to be quoted. What I had.
we've had a motion and a second to approve that change, and if you'll just send us that language to make, or you may have already handed that to Steve so he can make that change. And now, are there any other adjustments to the minutes, or can I take a motion to approve them with the amendment?
I'll make a motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, let's move to the next item on the agenda. Report from legal counsel. There is no legal counsel present. It's my understanding that the March meeting will have both Kutak Rock and Tom Carpenter present to discuss the change when the chairman's here, and we will notify both of them that will be at the third meeting or the third Thursday. So we will move on to report from board lobbyists.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would you clarify something for me, please? The date for the March meeting is the, which is that the 16th?
Okay, hold on just a second. Let's see. It'll be the 15th. It's the third Thursday in March.
All right, thank you. And Sarah, if I might start with a question to you. Did you attend the Municipal League's?
Yes, I did.
Did you hear anything there in the way of any pushback or complaint about the legislation that was passed last year that affected lot fee and PRV?
I didn't. Now, I will say I was not there for the first half a day. I attended the rest of the time, but I did not attend any sessions where that came up at all.
Okay.
There were presentations from the senators, congressmen. There were presentations regarding the sales tax issue that will hit the ballot for roads and the severance tax issue that will hit the ballot for roads. And just some updates on things on a national front for the National League of Cities, but I did not hear any discussion on local
Well,
legislation.
I thank you for commenting to the question, because I'm not hearing anything, and I kind of assumed that if there were complaints, you might have heard those at that meeting. But I have yet to hear anybody complain. There may be some that will, and I think the gist of that is that Little Rock, for example, got a substantial boost from that legislation. Other communities got a boost as well. Some were losers in that. Not very much, by the way. And some will see their contribution rate go up gradually each year, so that we're eventually levelized. And, I think because it's slow, they won't recognize it as much of a problem. It gives them a planning tool. They know it's going to go up by 1% a year. But so far, and I've talked to David, he's not really hearing any pushback either. So I thought it was important to make that point. I don't know. I mean, it's early yet. We don't know. Legislative issues are, this fiscal session officially starts next week. They're trying to keep the focus very narrow and stick with just fiscal issues. They're fighting and arguing over a number of things, and literally fighting and arguing. It's kind of disappointing. It shouldn't be that complicated a session, but they're going to make it that way. One retirement issue is not going to be part of this session, but in visiting with Senator Key the other day, he is a little bit, I wouldn't say unhappy, maybe a little disgruntled with lot fee. And I'm saying that because it spills over onto the PRV board as well, and that's the lawsuit. That, if you're aware of, legislative audit we have a lawsuit that lot fee is not willing to release social security numbers. Mm-hmm. And they feel that the state law clearly says they have the right to not disclose that information. Lake Audit feels they have the right to demand it from every state agency anytime they want it. Lot fee is kind of a pseudo agency. It's not really a state agency. And I think that we've got some legislators that are a little miffed about that. They kind of feel somebody's stonewalling and not wanting to release information. So I have talked to David about what I'm hearing, so he at least knows. I don't think it's going to cause a long-term problem. Whatever the court decides, the court decides. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the best way for them to resolve that issue, is to have the court rule either lot fee is correct or they're not correct. Either one party or the other is correct in that. And lot fee isn't wanting not to cooperate. They do want to cooperate. They want to help them find anybody that's double dipping or abusing the system. They just feel compelled to not release social security numbers, at least not in whole. So I thought you might like to know that, and keep you informed as well as David did. We try to look out for those boards and head off any negative stuff that's going their way. Other than that, we don't have anything really to tell you. And I apologize for not making the meeting last month, but I appreciate you understanding. I had a funeral to attend and got surprised at the last minute that I was asked to speak at that funeral. So I was glad that I was able to be there. So it was important to me anyway. Wow. Do you have any questions about anything?
Just on the Loppe thing.
Yes.
I think David Loppe, that Clark Loppe, really crux of it is they don't want to get caught in the middle and be scrutinized for releasing personal information and now getting out, and or getting subjected to some kind of legal challenge for releasing their Social Security number.
I think they're trying to take the safe approach here. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I will tell you that this is my opinion only. I think Legislative Audit's approach was very arrogant and demanding and unfriendly. There was no room to compromise at all, no suggestion, maybe we could work together, because David, I think, suggested that.
Right.
They don't want to do that, they want it, they expect it, and their attorney, who I know, I've talked to Lake Audit's attorney just kind of in passing, and he said, we just can't have a state agency refuse to give us what we want when we want it. That would handicap us, and I understand that too. I mean, they have a right to, if they're doing an audit, they need the information. They don't want somebody to withhold it at any
Well, and I would
agency.
imagine the impetus behind that is so they can run a check to make sure there's no double coverage in any of the other systems, and the best way to determine that is matching Social Security numbers, doing some kind of a search on that. But why they couldn't attempt that with the last 4 digits and then deal with exceptions, you know, I'm not sure, but.
The funny thing is, that let's say they had done that with the last 4 digits and they came up with 100 names. They wouldn't be perfect matches. But then all Lake Audit would have to do is say, would you tell us if any of these 100 people are in your system? And they would have no problem saying, yep, Jones, Smith, Brown. That they can tell them. They just can't give them a Social Security number. But they didn't want to do that. And Lake Audit's excuse is their computer system isn't set up to do it by just those 4 digits. But, you know, I know that Legislative Audit has been directed to do this, I'm sure, by a legislator or Joint Audit Committee or somebody. They're trying to do their job.
Well, and it's a slippery slope. They don't want people to, as you mentioned, refuse to provide auditors with information, and so.
I think that the section of the code that Lockheed may be looking to justify their position may not necessarily be a section that applies to Lockheed. It is a section that applies to APRS. I don't know, but the court will decide that, and then it's decided, and they'll move on from there. And but I think that David has certainly tried to do his job. I think the Lockheed board tried to take a solid position to protect their members. But everybody has the same interest, and that is we don't want anybody abusing our system.
What about potential legislation for the next session? Have you been talking with anybody about things that police may want to consider for the next legislative session, or been charged with moving forward with anything?
Only some modest things. Nothing. I don't feel that police at this point want to ask for any kind of an increase in anything. I think they're sensitive to the economy, sensitive to the legislature's attitude right now about expanding benefits, so I don't think there's too much move in that direction. There are a couple of modest things that could be done. One of those has to do with lot fee, not PRB, and that has to do with COLAs. And all of the other retirement systems, once you're in the drop, they apply the COLA to your drop benefit. That is not happening at lot fee. It's not a big thing. It's not a big number. It's very, very small. Last time we talked about it, the lot fee board rejected it, and we didn't push the issue. That may be something we might look at this time. But
Yeah, the only reason I'm bringing that up is I would think that this is the time, if you're going to start formulating things, to begin formulating them and to try to get the municipal league and others on board to help your cause. So.
One thing
I smile, Sarah, because it's never been
It's
effective
never
to get
something
the
where you-
league to be supportive of much. But they always have that. We always kind of assume they're going to be against anything that might
Well, no, they were
affect their
supportive
cause.
of the one we got through this last year, weren't they?
Well, that was a unique opportunity to work together, and they weren't
Those are
exactly. They didn't really step up and work very hard on that issue. They pretty much watched from the sidelines, and then later were very happy.
Roger, where we stand on maybe making another run at the supplement program again that we did last year? And we got so close, we got it out of committee twice, or? 2 times?
I'm gonna answer that this way. The governor has got one more legislative session before I guess we can officially call him a lame duck. As long as he's sitting there, it's not going anywhere.
So as long as Governor Beebe's governor, don't have a chance.
Not right now. I mean, he's very adamant about that. And the budget problems are such that he's very sensitive to the taking of any money at all that he assumes is his to use where he wants to use it. So, I mean, I'm just being realistic. That's where he is. And as a governor approaching his last term, he's getting less patient about things because he doesn't have to make anybody happy because he isn't running for office. And attitudes change. People become very hard-nosed. And his staff is becoming a little bit more belligerent about dealing with certain things.
Well, is there any talk about him seeking another office, statewide office?
There aren't any other, well, the only other statewide office he might potentially run for would be the U.S. Senate. And right now, I'm not hearing a thing. And I'm not sure that he would want that. I don't know. I really don't. He has said publicly he's not interested in running for anything.
Well, I have another thing that I've asked you about before, and that was the retired officer range qualification issue. Is there any, you said you was going to talk to the minimum standards people that you thought they could change it?
I'm just kind of waiting right now. We've pushed the issue to the point where we have a legislator that wants to do it and has handled it, and we'll take care of it. But right now, they've been dealing with the budget stuff, but he has indicated he'll make it happen. So, and that, I'm glad you asked the question because otherwise I would have forgotten to bring it up. But we have not forgotten the issue. We have laid the groundwork, and hopefully that'll happen.
Speaking of range qualifications, were you gonna put that in the bulletin this upcoming board?
I did.
Okay, it's already, okay.
I also put it on the website.
Yeah, I seen it there.
Okay.
Let me go back to Lee for 1 second, then I'm done. Lee, if we want to pursue that, we can. I just don't know that, I mean, we can talk about it. This is a good time to lay that groundwork. But
We just got so close, we did it out of committees a couple times, and it seemed like we waited to the last minute, and the money was already appropriated, and there was no way to change it. And Joyce Elliott basically emailed me, basically told me that the money was already appropriated.
well, that
Basically.
wasn't totally accurate. That money is not really appropriated. That is money that flows in. It isn't even, you can't predict exactly how much money is going to come. That has historically been the pool of money that the governor goes to, or that APERS goes to extract that money to help the state police plan. So they know it's there, and they don't want anybody reducing it.
Refresh my memory, but we were asking for quite a sum of money.
Yes.
What, weren't we? But maybe along the lines of what I think, I don't know if that's what it's referred to, I think it probably is to maybe decrease what we're asking for some, but boost the supplement up a little bit where it would almost fall in the range of, is it really worth arguing for or against?
And we can do that, and I think the time to start working on that is probably now.
Okay.
The issue is fairly easy to sell to legislators, and that is that we have retired police officers and firefighters that have no COLA. And they're the only ones that have no COLA of any of these systems. And they're left behind, and they're pretty helpless. And is it right to put them in that position where they just never have a chance to have any kind of an increase? So most of those guys understand that and are sympathetic to that and will agree with that part of it. It's just the money issue in the end as to how much it costs.
Well, it's just not, it wouldn't be a lot of money if we don't ask to like double it or triple it. If we just ask for a
Modest increase.
Modest increase, it may be a situation where it's just not enough for them to really.
We can
Well,
we can lay the groundwork for that.
It may be possible to just ask for a modest increase and let the decision be up to them to decide how much they.
Well, in the end, it is up to them, because they're gonna be the ones that. But that's a good point, Steve, and I've always said you can ask for this, and we can always agree to reduce it to this. I mean, it has to be a starting point, and I think if they understand we're looking for some modest change, that is a good place to start, and we'll work on that. I'll work with the chairs.
Okay, if that concludes your
Yes,
report,
ma'am.
we'll
Thank
move
you
to
very
number 8, report of the funding committee.
Madam Chair.
Oh, we did not meet this morning, we're still waiting for some answers, and from Mr. Moore and everything, and from the people from the state, if we can use certain funds to make a supplement.
Okay.
And then we understand that that's not gonna be available until June, so we was just trying to be patient and approach it, so that in June we'll be ready with all of our information.
Ken,
Well, I do have a report, concerning that last meeting that we had. I was asked to contact, Chief Deputy Mike Lowry, PCSO, with reference to the warrants that they served and the fees they collected. I received an email from him in which he stated the PCSO warrants division served 7,534 warrants in 2011. This includes district and circuit court warrants. They do not break them down by courts. PCDS, which apparently stands for Platte County District Court, stated they collected $21,400 in warrant fees. And that's what he stated.
On how many of the warrants did they collect, did you say? Is there a percentage that they collected on?
Well, that's what I'm fixing.
Okay.
But that means that they received the $50 warrant fee from only 428 warrants served, or approximately 5.7% of that total, which should have netted Pulaski County with approximately $376,700. Using that same percentage of collections, the city of Little Rock would only have netted $16,750 from the service of the 5,881 warrants that LRPD served in 2011. These facts point out two important distinctions that seem to require improvement by the city of Little Rock if it were to collect such fees. The first is that it appears that PCSO, with only 121 enforcement deputies, served 1,653 more warrants than LRPD did with 500 officers. The second is the very obvious poor collection method used by Pulaski County that should not be emulated by the city of Little Rock.
Well, and I wasn't able to attend the last meeting because I was at the municipal league conference, but one of the things that did concern me about this idea is I know that frequently, these types of things are waived, for probation or community service or other things. And so I was doubtful that there would be a very high collection rate. I didn't know it would be as bad as only 5.7%, but I was concerned that you might have a number in mind that was much, much higher than what it would actually.
Well, with regard to that, because this pension board already gets 10% of all fines received by the city of Little Rock, I've asked Kathy, I believe it was, to provide us with the amount of fines assessed by the Little Rock court systems, for example, in last year, and the amount of fines collected for last year. I don't know if she has that information for me today. I doubt it because I just made the request yesterday.
I'm good, but not that good.
But anyway, it concerns me because, in other words, if the city had assessed $500,000 worth of fines, and we got 10% of that, and they only collected $100,000 worth of fines, our percentage would decrease substantially. And I think that it might be worth looking at.
Well, it's always a concern for the city too in budgeting, but we don't have control over what the judges do. I mean, and they tell us that frequently when we meet with them.
Well, there may be some control over what the judges do, because when you assess a fee, I don't believe a court, I may be wrong about this, but I don't believe the court has the authority to waive a fee. They only have authority to waive their fines.
That
Well,
would-
and that's something we talked to Tom about.
We have, our judges have to run for reelection. And I know that we have one judge that some of the neighborhood people are not completely happy with. And so he's being called to a meeting next month to talk about why, he's not doing what the neighborhood people feel like he should. I think by the same thing, that this board should look at our judges, and the city should, and if this is a time that they're running for reelection, and we're not happy with what they're doing on decreasing all the fines and forgiving everything, I think it's a time that this group might want to ask the judges who are running for election between now and May to come before us and, to talk to us about, why the fines seem to not being collected, number one, and secondly, why they're being reduced so much.
Well, I agree 100% with that, Doc, and it seems to me to be an important issue to the city, because those are assets the city could use for whatever purposes they chose
I
that
don't
are
think
not
that's-
being collected.
I don't think that there's that much communication, in my opinion, between the cities making the judges understand that we're not happy with them. And maybe it's the elected board that should be talking to the judges and saying we're not happy. I know that Judge Levitt is up for re-election. Is any of the other judges?
I don't know.
Maybe we could ask
Well,
that.
it would be Judge Lytle, because she won at the same time. So, I would think that maybe in looking at this, and I'm sure that if we decide to do this, that the judges would have to be informed that we're going to do it. And I think it's the time that, March or April, we might want to just invite the judges who are running for re-election to come and talk to us. If all the money that we're getting now is determined by what they do, I think they need to hear from us, what that money's used for and why it's so important.
I make motion to put that on the March agenda and have them.
Don't the majority of our fines come from traffic court, though, and isn't that the
Not
one that you
necessarily.
didn't?
Not-
I think it is, and I think,
Did you say complaints?
no,
Majority of
the
fines.
majority of the fines come from traffic court.
Lee, would you be willing to say, next month, let's look at all our fines, let's ask a report from city staff of looking at all the fines, where they come from, and then in April, ask the judges who are running for re-election, or all the judges to come?
That would be appropriate.
Because I think that one thing they would want to see is, okay, how much, look here, Judge X, we're only getting $10 from you, and yet we're getting $100 from Judge Y, and because you're forgiving all the fees that
Well,
you're forgiving.
If you will state that again, I'll put that in the form of a motion, so that it'll carry as
So are we wanting like the number, not only, you don't just want the dollar amount, because it doesn't tell you what it is compared to what was,
Well, I
you
think,
wanna know the number of the fines that we're collecting that have been assessed.
I think what we need to just, what I asked Kathy for, and that is to receive from the court, each court, what amount of fines they assessed during the year, and versus how much they collected of those fines during that year.
But I think, Steve, yours is just concerned with numbers of the amount of money. I think we're looking at numbers of people, or number of cases.
So we want number and possibly amount, both. But I do know that one of the things that's always been difficult is when you look at the current year, like compared to a previous year, you do continue to collect, and so the rate for the current year is never as good as previous because of the number of delinquents that you do collect. So it builds as time goes on.
That's true, but by the same token, in the January collection will exist from the previous December, which won't be included in there for the charge assessed. But it will be included at the end of the year, so it should balance out to some degree.
Well, and I know that, we've hired two different firms, I think, that have helped with delinquent collections, and they actually have been very successful. But one of the issues that we had in 2011, fines were down for a couple of reasons. One was, this time last year, we weren't experiencing this balmy weather we've had lately, and there was an awful lot of snow and ice, and there were less what the chief calls enforcement days. There were also, so there were fewer tickets issued to begin with. And then there were also, because of the number of vacancies that we had in police officers, there were fewer citations issued.
So that would be expected, reasonably speaking, to go up.
To go up, you would certainly hope that to be the case.
So if we could go back to what Steve's already asked Kathy to do and have our next report, have that next month of March, and maybe ask the judges to come in April after we
I think
review.
we need three things. I think we need to know how much the fines was assessed, how much that was forgiven or waived, and then how much is collected, and then the ongoing collection of what is the balance. Because it may be that we want to ask the city board to look at the collection of those fines.
And we'll see, I know, we have to work with IT, to gather that information, but I also know this is a good time because we're doing it in preparation for the audit as well, so.
And then at the, I'm sorry, Roger,
No,
Just-
you're done.
and then to have the judges, to get it on record that we will then ask the judges who are running to come and talk to us at the April.
I think that they need the information themselves,
Okay.
and evidently it's not being supplied to them, and that's what UPS is saying about their meeting that they're asking the judge to come to, is that they want him to just see, what impact what he's doing is on the community. When you have a house falling down and you, every month you keep putting it off another month, you're giving them 60 more days and 60 more days, the house is still falling down, there's still drugs activity in the house, and so neighborhood people want action now. And I think that, we need to, if that is one of the places we get our money, another thing, we might want to look at the other places that our money comes from and make sure that they are, collecting it and that we know exactly what we're losing. We get personal property tax, what else do we get?
We have a very good collection rate on our personal property taxes, and actually, I was gonna tell y'all, we got the original charge for 2011 to be collected in 2012, and it was an increase of 3%, which was a pleasant surprise. Last year, the projected increase was 0.3% in just the original
What had Joey
charge.
projected, do you know in his,
I don't recall. I think he did still include some kind of a growth rate. He maybe had built in around 2% or something like that, but,
I believe that you're correct, it is around 2%. It's lower than what it's always been.
well, and again, collection kind of ebbs and flows, but the average, collection rate is about 95%, which is very good.
I knew it had really increased under the present people.
I always pay mine.
But, and before next month, I would like to look at all the different funding sources and trace them back to the beginning to make sure that they're all as much as we can get out of them.
I very appreciate it. Sure is.
Sarah, can I make some comments about the collections of fees and fines? This is something I'm very familiar with right now because, first of all, the difference between a fee and a fine. The court cost fees are a uniform fee, and of course the fines go to the city directly. How do you all collect the fines? Who is responsible for collection in Pulaski County and in Little Rock? Does the city do it? Does the police department do it? Does the sheriff do it, or do the courts do it?
The city does it.
Okay. So the collection burden then falls to the city to actually enforce the collection.
But then there's also the issue of order.
Right. Now, across the state right now, the collection of court costs is dramatically down. It has been going down since midsummer last year at a shocking rate. And the governor and the legislature are very upset. They don't understand why. Why didn't somebody see this coming? Who's not sending in the money? What's happened? So they're looking everywhere to see if they can't find that there's something wrong.
Well, and the judges did ask us, and we worked, Debbie can speak to this because she provided information how far back?
To 2000.
Yeah,
Year
we went back as far
2000.
as 2000 and satisfied the local judges, or the district judges and the state,
Right.
that Little Rock has contributed everything, collected and contributed everything due. And actually, when you looked at it, Little Rock was not the source of the decrease.
Did you all get audited?
No,
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 they
we
just
kinda did
asked
our,
us-
we pre-audited.
Well, legislative audit has been charged to go out and run audits on specific courts, and I didn't know if you were one of those or not.
Mm-mm.
No, I think we
But here's what
took the
basically the
initiative.
result is from leg audit. The answer is it's the economy. Now, the supposedly, if a dollar's paid in, that's supposed to be prorated. You know, whatever percent should go to the fine goes to the fine, whatever percent should go to the court cost is supposed to go to the court cost. That's not always the way it happens. Sometimes the cities get their fine money, and once they're whole, they aren't as aggressive about collecting the court costs, which they don't necessarily
Well, and the
do.
judges have, I think there was actually something where the costs were supposed to be first and then the fines. But we do
Technically.
have a resolution, or I don't know if it was a resolution or an ordinance that prorates,
Right.
I believe.
Now, here's kind of the point of all of this. The judge typically really isn't supposed to ever not collect the court costs. That is supposed to be collected, but occasionally, some judges will waive the court costs. It doesn't happen very often, and in some courts, it never happens. You have one district judge here who just doesn't ever, no matter what. The fines may be moderated. Generally, they don't wipe it out, but they might reduce the fine. It depends on the violation, depends on how they feel about it. But the only thing they can do, if that person isn't paying, is put them in jail. It costs more to house them in jail than what the fine will bring in or what the court cost is. I mean, it's $100 a little over for the court cost. What's it cost per day to keep a person in jail? And these people know you're not going to put them in jail, so they just ignore it. And you'll find that some of these folks have multiple incidents. They've been stopped and ticketed over and over and over again. And you are right, it's mainly traffic. This isn't unique to Little Rock, it's happening statewide. And it's very, very serious because that fund has suddenly run short, and it's called the Administration of Justice Fund. It typically has $56 million plus a year, and that is now going down at a rate where it's just never been like this before. And everybody wants to know what it is. Well, basically, it's people just don't have the money to pay. And that's having a big
Well,
effect.
and that is something else that we have heard from the judges when we've talked about additional fines. They have said they can't pay the ones they've got now. You can add all the fines you want, you're not gonna collect anymore.
And some of them give public service in
Right.
lieu of. They
Right.
don't just let them walk out the door typically.
Right.
Well, I'd like to state that, it seems to me that if you have a system that assesses a fine and doesn't collect it, and the people know it's not collected, of course they're not gonna pay it. That's the only reason to assure collection is to at least put some of those people in jail.
Well, no,
I
we
mean,
did
even if
make
it's just
some.
even if it's just $100 fine, if they did 2 or 3 days in jail, they may
Well,
wanna come in and
the
pay
cost of
that
it.
money.
Steve, in some
Space.
cases, it's a space issue. A lot of the jails simply don't have space to put them. They're already full. They're trying to keep the violent people in, so naturally, the very first one to be released or the first one not jailed is typically the least violent person, and somebody on a traffic fine is very unlikely to get jailed.
Now, one thing that was changed though is we used to have to write, after a year, they all dropped off the
And we
books.
carry them.
And now we are able to carry those forward. And do you remember how many years that is?
I do not.
I can't remember if it's 2 or 3, but anyway, we were able to change that, which should, I think it was 3, wasn't it?
Now, do you all do credit cards?
Now, that depends too. They can, on traffic fines, they can call in and pay with a credit card, and we do accept that. On the criminal, again, because when they appear in court, things can change. They can pay with credit card after it's adjudicated and they have a slip from the court, but they can't just call in and do it because it's always, it's a moving number.
Well, one of the problems with
that-
the credit card thing is that they typically they're not allowed to put only part of it on the credit card. They have to pay it all with
Right.
100%. And some people just can't do that. So one way or the other, I think in the next legislative session in 2013, there's going to be probably an effort made to create some uniform rules statewide about collections. Because right now, there's no uniformity in how it's collected. You go to one county, the sheriff's office does all the collections. Another county, it's the city and a city employee and maybe the city police. I can tell you in Garland County, because the judge there told me this, they have a problem with having enough personnel. If they had one more person, they could collect substantially more money because they're just understaffed on the collection side. So I think there will be some improvement, but right now, there's a handful of reasons that are contributing to the problem, but the problem's worse than it's ever been. You're gonna find the numbers when you look at them are way down. At least I would guess they would be way down to what they've been in the past.
Well, maybe the city of Little Rock could contribute something to the state's effort by examining our fines and fees collections.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be useful
Trying to
information.
determine what can be done to improve it.
Anyway, I didn't mean to interject that, but that is an issue that's
Right.
really being
Well,
hotly
and there has
discussed.
been a push to maybe move court, instead of doing a pro rata, to do the court costs first because of the administration of justice crisis. That's one of my, or that's one of the things that I believe is maybe
Say that
underway.
again, please.
To press that court costs are paid first ahead of the fine piece.
Okay.
Sarah, I'd also like to know how many extra warrants we have sitting there waiting, so what the backlog
Somebody else had to totally, we told somebody else had to look at all the numbers.
But I
Okay.
think that is the
Pay the
big
court
problem.
costs first.
If we've got a bottleneck with the warrants, or we did it a couple of years ago, where I checked it, and maybe we need to see with all these added police officers. I know, for those of you who haven't read the newspaper, starting about the 18th of March, the city's going to enforce no parking in the yards, the front yards, and the side yard if you're on a corner. And that would be done by code officers, and they're hiring 10 new code officers. And if the code officer drives down the street and you're parking in your front yard, they're going to stop and issue you a $50 ticket. They don't have to give you a warning or anything else. You automatically get a $50 ticket if you're parked in the yard.
$50?
It goes to the owner of that, it goes to the owner of that vehicle, registered owner
In
of the
your
vehicle.
yard, If you pull up to your house and decide you're gonna park on your grass in your front yard in Little Rock, it's gonna be a $50 ticket. And if you have 4 cars parked in the yard, it's $200, $50 per car.
Well, what if I park the car on the grass for washing?
You get a $50 ticket, it's a code officer.
It has to be on a pad, yeah. But, okay, just to recap, and then you can put this in the form of a motion, Ferris, as you wanted. My understanding is we have been asked to provide the number of fines assessed and collected, the amount assessed, waived, and collected, and the backlog on warrants at the next meeting. And then at that meeting, we will discuss inviting the judges that are running for re-election to appear at the April meeting, once our data is gathered to ask them.
That
about
is my motion.
I second.
All in favor?
Second what I was gonna say.
Do I hear it again?
Opposed? Okay. So Steve, and we'll move forward with trying to gather that information.
On the funding committee, I had one thing I wanted to talk about. I kind of want to open up the discussion for everybody to probably put your input in it, but I've got these numbers here that Joe prepared for us well, have copies of them. They jump around so much back and forth. Like over on 2016 on the next page, starts off with a COLA. 2016, the city will save $1.2 million.
Yeah.
With a
Doesn't
COLA.
happen again.
And it goes on down 4 or 5 years where they keep saving money with that COLA. But I was wondering, just open up for discussion here, when the sales tax was passed,
Not strong people.
we were told that we would get at least $500,000. That's was in the resolution, it's written in there at least. And I was wondering if we could possibly maybe get Joey and David here at our next meeting to ask them, is it possible to do a study on this to show what, if there's a little more money plugged in this, will this smooth this out more?
I mean, advance it.
Yeah, advance it more for the city, but they more attractive to the city. And I'm just opening up discussion if anybody would like to talk about
In my
it.
opinion, that is right now, the board is just kind of waiting on so much to wait and see how the money's coming in in March.
Right.
I would suggest that we wait until probably April or May after we've got a month or two of it, and if it looks like it's going to be above, then I think we need to be there to say, okay, now if you would put a little more in, this was what you could do. But I would suggest we wait until probably June, until the city has 3 months of it coming in. From the figures we've seen so far, it's growing up.
Well, the other thing is, I'm sure, you know, for the study that we got at the end of the year, the city paid for that study, and I think it was $4,000. So, I mean, those studies don't come without a
Sure,
cost
I
as well. So that's something that I do think, I agree with Director Adcock that waiting for a little bit of history, because we've got an awful lot of things we've already committed that we need to make sure we can pay for. You know, yes.
I would like to get our $400,000 in the bank and this new account and everything, and then after we get that, then go back and ask them for more.
I necessarily wasn't interested in asking them for more money right now. I was just trying to get the study lined up to see basically what we would be looking at. You know, because it does take a couple of months to do a study with, and that was my point, just see what, if they could possibly come here and talk to us, if they could do a study, they may not be able to do one, I don't know. And that's with a certain amount or whatever, but I was just trying to open it up for discussion.
Well, and again, we had talked previously too, that the more the city puts in, if you get to a point, your what is it, turn back funds decrease, so there's a balancing.
That's what, there's a balancing act, but
Well, I'd like to state that I believe that Lee is correct in asking Jody for a report, not to ask for anything, but just to see how much would be required to bring us up to that point where the city could do that.
But in order for him to determine that, there's a lot of work that goes into it.
Well, right, but I mean, with the information that's provided now, with the increase in our money from the state and from the city, how much more would be required for us to be able to achieve a merger with Lockwood with the 3% COLA. And I think that's information that would be very valuable to us, and to tell you the truth, I mean, with the board considering hiring ex-con to do sidewalk maintenance around Little Rock, I mean, it seems to me like they're awful desperate to spend all that sales tax money, but,
In March, you know, at the end of March, our PRB report is due, and they'll have fresh data. And I would imagine they're gonna want to use that data for any study that would move forward. So I do think it makes sense to wait until June to ask them for a
Can we do
study.
this? Because, and of course, being on PRB, and it's certainly no violation of FOI for me to discuss matters with David Clark since he's not on the board. And there has been discussion with David. And I agree with both of them, and I agree with you that, and Director Adcock in terms of timing, that June might be, that's only, well,
4 months.
yeah, it's a pretty good time off, but this is what might be helpful. And whether there's any additional funding or not, the point that Lee made here is that it basically over a 15-year amortization for this fund to consolidate with LAFI, and that, I think, it's safe to say is clearly the objective of everyone involved, from LAFI down to us. At some point in time, when it's affordable, it's got to be affordable for the city to do. Okay, that's just, it's got to be, because the other one's just going to be paying. But what's happening, like Lee said, it goes from the first year of a net savings at 1.2 billion to the 15th year of a net expenditure of 3.1 million. And what could be done with Jody and how he might be helpful, regardless of whether there's any additional funding or not, is to maybe level this out and do some numbers in terms of what if this amount of revenue was added, what would the outcome be, how could it be leveled out, and to explore any possible way that Jody could come up with, working through us, the city, retired police, to find some way that makes it affordable for the city to consolidate in a shorter period of time. So, I mean, that's my thoughts on it, and just because I think maybe the first thing to do is not to say, Jody, do a study. We need to know what to ask him for specifically, and I think he could be helpful there by maybe simply attending one of our meetings and kind of kicking these things around with him, understanding that the objective is it's got to be affordable for the city to do. And maybe work together to see if there's something that we hadn't thought of, and to, if we are going to have him do a study, so that we'll specifically know, he will know, and we will know what we're asking for. That can be determined together with Jody. That was my thoughts.
But
Okay.
that's why I was really wanting just to get them here to maybe at our next meeting to ask these questions to them, to see.
Well, we're gonna have the attorneys at the next meeting too, so how many, do you want to invite Jody and them
First, yeah.
as well to the March meeting?
That's right. And, but.
Jody and David, or just?
Well, we could ask both of them if they want to come. If they want to come, that'd be fine. We can ask both of them to come. But this is like, you were talking about the property tax. We got good news on the 3% uptick on it.
Capital
I'm
Point
sure
Partners
Jody's
is gonna
not
be here in March as well.
factored that into this study, and that could make
Well,
all
we think
these
he's
numbers
factored
change.
in 2% though, so, but
I
we
think
can,
it could make all this difference, for it to be
It's gonna be a
affordable
long
to the city to maybe do that. But that's what I was wanting to do. We're just trying to get them here at the next meeting, and we'll talk about it, and go we can.
And let me mention one other thing, and it might be something to explore with Dave and Jody. You know, on the Lofty consolidation, they amortize it over 15 years. That's simply a Lofty rule. It's not a law. And it's something that if a fund is actuarially sound and wants to consolidate with Lofty, they amortize it over 15 years. If a fund is 50% underfunded, they amortize it over 15 years. That hasn't always been the case. That's a recent, fairly recent, relatively speaking, that's a recent rule change of Lofty. We might want to ask during the course of the conversation is, you know, what impact would it have maybe if Lofty would agree, or consider at least, maybe extending this over, say, 20 years, because that would lower the payments, because it's amortized over 20 in lieu of 15. So, I mean, that's just one of many things that that might be beneficial to have Jody and David here, just to kind of talk about the.
so when we extend this invitation, it's kind of a brainstorming session to see what kind of things that we could potentially do, with the overall objective being making it affordable to merge with Lofty, with a Kohler, sooner than is projected under the current scenario.
More affordable for the city to merge, that's right.
Okay. Is that something that needs a,
I make a motion.
I'll say.
all in favor?
Aye.
So that would be the March meeting, and we'll just have to see if that works into their schedule. Sometimes it doesn't, but we will ask.
You want us, are you on the board? Y'all, you two are on the board. You ever want to call them?
Just, I mean, it don't matter, but.
I don't care. I mean, we'd be happy to let y'all do that if you'd like. We've got a lot on our plate for the next meeting already.
That's gonna be a long meeting, I reckon, that too.
Well, that was my point, with the warrants and the
Well,
lawyers and now the,
I think it will be a long meeting, but I think, I'm kind of like Lee, I think it's something's got to be put off. We might want it to be this, because
on our schedule?
Because it's not going to be commissioning.
Oh, I know, that's
to
too
do
good.
the study. It's going to be.
No, and I think at the point, if we get to that point where we ask for the
Okay.
study, they're gonna wanna use the latest figures that are due. in
Which will
March.
time pretty
Yeah.
well in terms of.
March information.
Mhm. Okay, does that conclude the report of the funding committee? Okay, there's no report from the board chairman this week. Report from the board secretary.
Well, the only thing I have to report is that Robert's Rules of Order has a new 11th edition available from Amazon.com for $12.12. And I recommend this board purchase for our board members to provide them with the latest rules applicable to this board. For that reason, I make a motion that this board authorize our administrative staff to purchase whatever number of Robert's Rules of Order books may be required to achieve that goal.
I second.
Yeah, I'm sorry, questions,
Yep.
discussion?
Don't you have to have a credit card or something to pay Amazon.com? And this board does not have a credit card.
Well, you do, don't you? Oh.
No, I'm fixing to cancel it. Mine's took belts and pennies, so I don't think they'll take that one.
I just stated that it was $12.12 from Amazon.com. I didn't specify that you had to purchase it from Amazon.com.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Does Office Depot carry it?
Okay, so the question is, you want to ask the board to purchase a new edition of Robert's Rules of Order for who all? For all the members of the
Whoever
board?
wants one,
7
which I do.
members or 8 or?
Have they changed?
They have changed.
Right.
The rules
I
have
wasn't
changed?
aware
The
of that,
rules
but
of-
apparently.
The rules have changed?
Well, they've
Just
been
an
added
addition.
to and modified to some extent. The edition that we have is the 10th edition, and the edition that is now current is the 11th edition. And it's been, they changed it about 3 or 4 or 5 months ago, I guess.
I think it's good.
I wonder if there wouldn't be something on the internet that you could just get the changes and add to the book that you already have.
No,
I'll have-
there's not, all
Electronic
that's available on the
that you can
internet
download to your
is,
iPhone.
a past version of the Robert's Rules of Order, it's like 4th edition or so, and that's not current. Robert's Rules of Order is a private publishing company, basically, that devised these orders many years ago, and they have copyright over them, so they won't allow anybody to scam with them.
I think we tried to get a copy online one time and couldn't do it, so we had to buy the books.
I think they protect it.
Yeah.
Well, if
We'll see.
the staff determines that the $12.50 from Amazon is the best price that can be had, I can order it with my credit card, you can just pay me back, it doesn't make any difference, I just think.
I like that idea.
Well, I just want to throw this out there. I mean, we're going to have the attorneys here next time, and I know Mr. Carpenter is responsible for overseeing the rules, I guess, at our city board meetings. I'm just not sure, you know, I mean, if he ends up coming on as our board attorney as well, do we need to have copies for every member, or, I'm just throwing that out there for discussion.
I was gonna say, whoever's ordering them, if it's Kathy, poll the board members to order one for any of the board members that want one. I don't particularly need one, I'll rely on someone else's if there's a question.
I don't think we need it.
But some do, and it's legitimate for those that do.
I won't want
Okay, so you want us to order how many copies? One?
however many copies.
Just
that-
poll the board.
one? 2. You want one? 2.
2 copies.
Would you order them and let me reimburse you then? You
Yeah.
cool with that?
Yep, I'll just add a little handling fee to the.
See, here for a list of notable changes.
Those clerks are gonna stop.
Okay, so I would need a motion.
I
Purchase.
think Steve made a motion.
Okay,
I
Steve made a
second.
motion to purchase,
That's it.
and we're gonna say 2. Lee seconds, all in favor? Opposed? And, so the motion passes, and Steve, you're gonna order and then submit a request for reimbursement.
Right. So there's just two people that want the new book.
Okay. Okay, report from board treasurer, that would be me. Go to 11A, your tab here. Because I was absent, attending the municipal league conference last time, we've got the preliminary December, and we are still calling it preliminary because we are in the final stages of reconciling everything with the city's books and trying to make sure we had all the final investment information from Stevens to do our reports, so we don't have a situation like we did a couple of years ago when we got the present information last. But as of the end of December, we had $44,400,442 in assets, net of tax liabilities and such. The fair market value of the assets managed by Stevens was $43,512,000, with the difference being primarily the cash at Metropolitan and then the income tax liabilities and such. The December drop balance was $24,157,992. If you turn the page to look at the income statement, our preliminary numbers, and you'll see on line 8, and this is where we put it, but we're adding another line on the January report, but you'll notice a $105,000 contribution listed under miscellaneous. That's the contribution that the city made to ensure that we met that minimum funding requirement to get the additional turnback. We had been authorized by the board, the city board, to make that additional contribution, and this is what we needed to make in order to make sure that we qualified for that additional supplemental funding. And so that was made at the end of the year. On line 3, on the property tax, you can see in the year-to-date column, $3.5 million, so $3,528,279. That compares to $3,416,798. So it's about $112,000 better than it was the previous year.
About 112,000.
The property tax, it was about $112,000 better than it was the previous year.
That's 2000.
Yeah, this is 2011's number.
Okay, so see, Jody just has 68,000 on his report. Better than you, when we're already sitting 100 and something. Now it's twice as much as Jody reported on his report. So that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, but I think he would be very hesitant to take 1 year and say that's going to happen every year.
Yeah, I know that, but that was my point about getting.
He's looking at a historical average, but yeah, that's fine.
He's bid a lower percentage of where they come.
Okay. So, our revenues before, any kind of investment, income or loss for the year was $5,028,007. For the month was $167,000, with most of that being the city's $105,000 contribution. Our expenditures, benefit payments, excluding drop and, the supplements and all that, $7,010,000 for the year compared to $6,940,000 a year ago, and the difference is just additional retirees. The funeral benefit, we had another funeral benefit in the month of December, which brought the year-to-date total to $39,000. We are reflecting in the expenses as we were reconciling with the city, and you can see all the expenses are very comparable to the previous year, with the exception of the legal fees, which we're addressing. But the audit fees had actually been incurred mid-year, but the charge, while it had hit the pension fund on the city's books, had not been remitted by the pension fund to reimburse the city. So we took care of some of those reimbursements at the end of the year. So year-to-date, the expenses were $7,612,000 compared to $7,396,000 a year ago. And, part of that is the future supplement was significantly higher this year than it was in the previous year. And then the other big difference is just the legal fees were quite a bit higher in 2011 than they were the previous year. So before any disbursements for drop, the fund lost $2,584,000 compared to $2,563,000 a year ago. So you can see, even though there were some increases in revenue with the property tax and the city's additional contribution, the expenses surpassed that a little bit, and so the fund lost just about $20,000 more than it did the previous year before any kind of investment returns. There were $50,000 in drop payouts in the month of December, which leaves us at $2,449,000 year to date. So after subtracting drop and before investment returns, the fund lost $500,000 in the month of December and $5 million year to date. The investment returns for the month, there was $337,000 combined in just the change in the unrealized gain or loss on the value of the portfolio, and then the realized gain on sale of assets or any distributions, dividends and such. So for the year, the net investment income after fees was only $426,000, okay? And a whole lot of that was due to a positive December, $337,000. So year to date, the fund lost, and this is after investment fees, the fund lost $4.6 million compared to net income last year of $503,000. And again, I want to reiterate, there may be, I don't expect a lot of changes. There might be some minor tweaking to those numbers as we true everything up. If we get something in from Capital Point, this month to true up that final fourth quarter, I think we have most everything else.
Going to line 11, confiscated goods now. The column, the first column, 12/31/10, is that the year 2010?
That's the year 2010. So that is down $13,000.
Well, the preliminary, column preliminary, 12/31/11, what does that represent?
That's just a month. And
That's a month.
And the year-to-date says amended because as we were going through, that's the year-to-date through 2011, okay? And it says amended because as I was reviewing and tying everything to the 1099s and the type, I noticed that there had been a slight misclassification between just benefits and drop payments. Some of the drop numbers were reflected net of taxes and not gross, and the difference was flowing through benefits, and this reflects the gross, which ties to the 1099s that were issued.
I was just wondering what happened. It's dropped from 16,000 to less than 4,000.
And that's just the sale of confiscated goods. So, we'll have to follow up with the police department. I have no idea.
I can remember that it used to be around 40,000.
Yeah.
Would you checking on the court things, would you check on that confiscated goods too? Because I can't imagine it falling that much.
It's been falling for a while for some reason.
What,
And my-
are they still having auctions, or are they doing it on the internet, or?
No, what they were doing, and I would assume they still are, they for many years, they hadn't physically had auctions here. They contract through, and actually it's bringing in more money doing it like contracting. The way they've been doing it was contracting through a company, I believe, out of New York. And what they do is they pick property up and they actually auction it online, which is a good deal. I mean, it proved to be, and we were involved in the decision to do that because they presented it to the board. We approved it back when. But that's something that bears checking into because less than $4,000 for all of the property for a calendar year that's confiscated, plus unclaimed money. It's not related to drug seizure. Often we'll have more than that, just money that's turned over to us.
Automobiles.
Well, yeah, the automobiles don't go to us. They go to the cities.
The
But
vehicle auctions have the
and
fleet.
Well, what goods go to this bank?
Things that are seized in a arrest, but not the drug. What is,
Well,
no,
not
that
all-
goes to
not all
seize
of
money
it.
funds. That goes to seize money funds, so.
So this, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Basically, everything that police bring in there is stored down there. And it includes money, if somebody finds money out here, or if there's unclaimed money, and believe it or not, that turns in over a period of time to a substantial amount, that's not related to drug seizure. Now, drug seizures handled differently, but it basically includes everything except automobiles, and automobiles are real property that's seized as a direct result of drugs. It's basically everything, also with an exception of handguns. Now, they're supposed to still be selling long guns, okay, just long guns, hunting guns. So that's what it includes.
That's so detailed, let's check it out and see if maybe something's falling off the radar screen.
What are you saying, Rusty?
Well, I'm just saying, if they go back to, I offered at one point to do the auctioneer, because it cost, $3,000 or $4,000 just to do that. If they didn't have to have a license, I'd do that just so we could recoup some of the money. Because I can do that.
I can tell you firsthand some of the things, the problems with those auctions that occur, is they, in order to expedite the auctions, they would group things together. Let me give you an example.
Oh, no, buddy, I'd stretch it out for a day.
Well, let me give you an example. They group all of the jewelry together in one big old box. Now, they have some real jewelry, and it don't bring anywhere near what it will bring auctioning online or individual pieces. And you'd have 2 or 3 people, only 2 or 3, that could bid up to $4,000 for a box of jewelry. So that's just an example, but it turned out better, I thought. Well, it did. The numbers turned out better doing it online, but that's
Who's
history.
over the auction?
The property, it's civilians that,
Which captain is over it?
Well,
would be,
you know, it just, well, he was. I don't know, it's changed so much.
There wasn't.
We just restructured.
Oh.
Dustin's not over it anymore. I know Chief Thomas is the chief. You can probably ask him.
Yeah, I think we're
I'm
gonna
not
have to
sure.
start there.
We'll find, yeah.
All we do
You
is
can-
take the
We just
deposits and
restructured.
we don't collect this.
We just restructured, now we know who's over that area.
Okay, well, that concludes the December preliminary report.
just one other question, real
Okay.
quick. Line 8, what is the miscellaneous?
Well, typically, that's a very small number, and the number, like, it can be, a settlement, in fact, this year, there's 2 numbers in there, I think. One is our $105,000 contribution the city made at the end of the year to ensure the funding, and the other $30,000 or so was a settlement on a investment lawsuit or something from years ago that was collected. So it's something that doesn't fall within a normal revenue category. And it should be a very small number unless it's, you know, I mean, it should be an unusual event. And there were really 2 that I can think of this year. Okay. We move on to the January report. You'll notice on line 2, we did transfer funds to First Security Bank. Our new banking contract went into effect at the first of the year. The value of the portfolio as of the end of January was $44,874,230. The amount managed by Stevens was $43,194,360, and that includes the accrued interest receivable on investments, and that does agree to their report. I always check that when they give us their report, make sure we're in sync. January drop balance was $23,869,607. If you'll turn the page, you'll now see we've added on the income statement line 3, which is the city sales tax contribution. That's 1/12 of the $500,000. It's set up to be made as a recurring deposit. It happens every month. So by the end of the year, you'll see the $500,000 there. Now the $146,000, we're still waiting, I guess, to see what y'all decide to do. You know, whether you want that to go into the fund or whether you want that to be in that separate.
460,000?
No, the is it 460? Okay, 460, yeah.
460,000, it's my understanding that we're gonna hold that in a separate account.
We're holding it in a special project account, but we have not moved it into the fund, is what I'm saying. If you
Right.
decide you don't wanna do the separate local type of thing, then it would go into the fund.
Right. Well, I would rather we just hold it like you have now,
Mhm.
and until we decide whether we're gonna do the supplement, or we're gonna put it towards the Lofty merger,
Okay.
and do that. And we can't get our hands on it till June anyway, is my understanding, and that way, by June, we will know basically what we wanna do.
Okay.
I recommend holding it in a separate account. Once it goes in the pension fund, it can't be retrieved.
Right, then it can only be spent in the way of benefits or administration
So,
costs, right? Okay, so everything else there is normal stuff. Although, and we need to look, I see there's a very large number on suspended employee.
Well, it's
We-
decreased, actually.
We got that, and it was for all of 2011. It was a big number, and we received that in January.
Well, and they pay it each January for the
Uh-huh.
whole year. And if I'm not mistaken, it kind of balances out that, I mean, Debbie and I thought it was kind of large, but I'm thinking it's kind of,
Okay, so, well, and if you turn back to the December report, which is the first one we looked at, you'll see in 2010 it was 51,696. 2011, we had 44,039. So this was 77,616, which is a nice jump. I guess we had more suspensions during
I think it's a
2000.
good thing that the chief is suspending them rather than firing them, because that's the result of that.
Okay.
We better get rid of
Okay, if we look at our benefits section, 613,000 in regular benefits paid out. We do have the $150 collected from Adine Garrett in January. And then, we did have some legal and consulting fees, 2024. The total benefits and expenses for the month were $616,302. So, January is always a very low month for property taxes. The total was the net loss, from payment of benefits is $401,191. There was a $306,992 drop benefit paid out. So the loss, after payments for drop, $708,183. We did have very positive returns in the month of January, as they just told us. So the gross investment gains, $1,233,594. And then the quarterly fee always happens in the month following the end of the quarter, so that $51,000 is really for the fourth quarter of the previous year. And so the net, after the very positive returns, is a positive $473,788 for the month of January. Of course, year to date's the same since we're in the first month of the year.
On this, Gary, the June, July, and September that is unpaid. Kathy, is that your accounting? Would the court agree with that?
I think they would.
Well, and I was looking at that because we did collect 1,500, which if you're just dividing by 150, that would indicate she made a payment 10 months. But one of those might have been a retroactive from the previous year. So I'm not sure. I haven't verified to make sure which month she's paid for and which she hasn't. I know, isn't that
Talking about
Rusty
AD?
Tom? Yeah.
Ooh, no.
We
I've
have a
got it marked down, it's
spreadsheet,
like, it goes back to last year, and I've got them marked the months that she.
Okay.
However, it's kind of a discussion between she and I, is it better to keep up it that way, or just we have a total amount of what's due, and just
Right.
keep it up for what is owed, and not necessarily the months that she didn't pay.
It's what
For
she
this time
still
period,
owes.
this is what she owes.
Well, the general way of application of payments is you can't pay, say, a December payment when the October
Has not been
November
paid.
hasn't been paid. If you make a payment, it's going to be October.
For October, that's right.
But the thing of it is, and one or two things, that I'm not willing just to write these off, because the fund can use the money, and second of all,
She owes it.
she swindled this fund out of that money. So, we can wait to see what happens with the attorney issue, down, within a month or two. And, if Ms. Carpenter's office is going to play any part in it, and that's something they could check on. Or a couple of us can call and try to schedule a meeting with the judge, because I don't have any problem going over there and say, Judge, can you help us on this? Your court mandated that she make restitution at the rate of $150 a month, and she's failed to do that. She has ignored the court, and we're talking about a fund that's $50 million underfunded and has 300 aging members and widows. So could you help us motivate her to fulfill her obligation by possibly holding her in contempt of court? He done that before, and she paid. So we may just, I don't know, you want to just wait until we see what happens?
Let's see what the legal counsel says, they wouldn't really get one. Next week, they're gonna give a presentation, right? Next meeting? Pay them.
Okay, on
What?
the following page, you see
It'll be here
your,
anyway.
attorney's fees were only $180 during the month of January, and that was the bill from Dover Dixon for reviewing the Supreme Court opinion, and that's included on the following page there. So that concludes the financial report, and then the next item would be the changes in membership. So I'll entertain a motion to approve those reports.
I'll make a motion to approve the financial reports.
All in favor?
Uh,
Opposed? Okay, financial reports for December and January are approved. On to change in membership status, 11B. No changes, other than the status of the Dean Garrett case, which we've really already discussed, so. Board member topics, response to question, is that something that we still need to talk about?
Yeah.
See, okay.
During our last pension board meeting that Ms. Lincoln was attending, our chairman presented this board with a letter from the licensing authority that our board did not have sufficient time to review during that meeting. I stated it was his hope that this letter would finally allow this issue to be laid to rest. However, that letter did not provide any explanation for our treasurer's actions in that matter, nor did it provide any response to Ferris's valid concern that he expressed during our last pension board meeting when he stated that Mrs. Linehan and Mr. Moore had arbitrarily undermined the authority of this board to approve expenditures by their actions in this matter. In my opinion, that statement by Ferris clearly indicates his belief, as well as my own, that this matter involved the basic right of our pension membership to control the pension funds as exercised through this board. That is statutorily protected under Arkansas Code Annex 2411-405C that states, in pertinent part, the board shall have the absolute control and management of the funds provided for in this subchapter. That includes all the assets within our pension fund. More importantly, under Robert's Rules of Order that were approved and adopted by this board in the March 2010 pension board meeting and are now binding on our determinations in all cases, those rules clearly state that rules or statutes providing the basic right of the individual member cannot be suspended even by unanimous consent or an actual unanimous vote. For that reason, if our treasurer's action in this matter suspended the statutorily protected authority of this board for whatever reasons, those actions would constitute a violation of that rule that this board cannot simply ignore. Therefore, because this issue involved the basic right of our membership, and no vote of this board was ever obtained on this important issue during our last pension board meeting, I have placed this issue back on our agenda so that our treasurer may finally have the opportunity to explain her action in this matter to our board so that it may resolve this issue in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order.
So what are you asking me to do? I'm sorry, I'm a little confused by all that. You just want me to say,
Well, what I'm asking you to do is to,
I mean, I didn't bring the letter from the Arkansas Society with me today, but, I mean,
I have it right here if you need to reference.
Okay, well, and basically what they did was, acknowledge that we have a fiduciary responsibility and, referred to the rules of that designate that responsibility. And my dilemma is that the board did vote to make an expenditure for something that I believe is outside the authority, I guess, of the board to spend funds on it. The pension fund was intended for membership benefits and for administrative costs. And our attorney, when he responded to the question about whether or not we could expend dollars on advertising, said while it was not expressly prohibited, he left a lot of gray area on whether or not that could be perceived to be an administrative cost, and cautioned the board that should we move forward with that, there could be challenges that would go against the board's intent if resolved. My concern was the unfunded status and the fact that I felt we were expending money on something outside what the fund is fund's intended purpose. Now, that is a very extreme, rare circumstance. Never have we ever tried to do anything like that in the past. I don't anticipate us doing something like that again. I would never withhold benefits to members. I would never refuse to pay administrative costs this board approved. And my question that I was trying to get answered was, as a CPA and as the treasurer of this fund, if I simply voted no, which I did when you all asked to expend those funds, does that protect me from legal action should this fund be sued for a breach of fiduciary responsibility? Unfortunately, both from my AICPA board and from the attorney, we just didn't get a black and white answer. I guess that's a matter for the courts to decide. So I don't know what else you want me to say. I felt like I acted in accordance with my fiduciary responsibility to the fund. And I have told you all I would never refuse to pay benefits unless there weren't enough assets in the fund to make the payments. And then, and then we have to prorate, I guess, according to the law.
If I may, and it goes to the comment that one of the comments that Steve just made, and that was concern that I raised in the last meeting. I did, and my concern, I want to be very clear, I would like to have had maybe a better explanation, but, don't forget this last part of my statement. I think it's time to move on. Let me tell you just my own personal opinion of why I come to that conclusion. Is if you compare where we were at that point in time versus where we are now, and the work, or the way we're getting along now, the way we're actually starting to accomplish things now, I think that's a consideration. In addition to that, let's not forget the facts. The facts were, when that motion was made, that the attorney did indeed, we knew, at least I knew, and I think every one of us knew, that it was questionable to ever spend that money in that manner. Okay? It was somewhat questionable. In fact, it was so questionable that we asked our own legal counsel, could we even legally do that? And he said, yes, but it could be problematic. Basically, was what he said. We never asked that it be expended. I don't know that any member ever intended to even ask that it be expended, that we spend pension fund assets on advertising. But the motion was out there, and yes, it is concerning to me, some, but I do happen to also know that, number one, in the past 25 years, we've never had a problem with any check being issued when he said issue it, or we're going to court. There was one other instance here just a few years ago that the city attorney didn't want, or not the city attorney, the city manager didn't particularly want to issue the check. They had been back to Dennis Lanahan. But he did, because ultimately he did, because the board had directed to do so against his wishes. And he didn't think it was right to do it. It was a debated issue, it involved other circumstances. But the facts are that in 25 years, when it came down to it, we said cut the check or we're going to court. They cut the check. We never got to the point where we said cut the check. If we had got to that point, and they had refused to do it, then all it would involve is preparing documents to the court to get an emergency hearing to compel them to. So to me, this far down the road, it's just simply not worth it, because we can address it. There is a means to us, for us to address it in a short period of time if the need ever arises. And looking at the last 25 years, if that's any indication, it won't ever arise. That's my opinion.
Well, I'd just like to point out that in the letter that you received from your certified public accountants, it begins by stating that first and foremost, your legal concerns and or questions should be communicated with your legal counsel, which would have been legal counsel, which we had already done. Secondly, I'd like to point out that while our legal counsel said that they wanted to point out that this issue had never been decided in Arkansas courts before, there are numerous issues that have never been decided in Arkansas courts before. What we asked him for was, is it or is it not permissible under current Arkansas law to expend those funds? I guess the reply was yes.
That it wasn't
And you're-
expressly prohibited, yes.
Right, but his reply was yes. And, I mean, he could say it wasn't specifically prohibited all day long. And it wouldn't have been correct, it wasn't. But the second thing is that according to Robert's Rules of Order, if you suspend, I'm not saying, I know that your conduct didn't rise to the level of a violation of that law.
Well, can I speak back to the first one? Because what I did, if y'all recall, is I did ask the attorney the question about whether or not, what rights did I have as a CPA and the treasurer to the fund. I was just asking the question, what are my rights in this circumstance? And then, in order to let y'all know that I'd asked the question, I sent the email to give you a heads up. I've asked this question, and I'm waiting for an answer, and I did not want to issue a check until I got a response to that question. Never, you know, I didn't say I will never pay this bill. I said I was waiting until I got a response. There was never the submission of a question, or I mean of an invoice that I didn't pay. And unfortunately, it did take us a long time to get a response, and I think part of that is because the issue became moot.
Well, I'd just like to state that I have your email here in front of me. And what you stated was, I do not intend to release any payments for this purpose, pending an opinion.
Pending an opinion.
That's right, and that is a suspension of our authority to approve those funds. And that conduct is not allowed under Robert's Rules of Order.
So what do you want to do to me as a result?
Well, what I would like to do, as a result, is to obtain your sincere promise
Would you just raise your right hand and say you won't do that again?
I can raise my right hand and say I will act in a fiduciary capacity for this fund. And
Well, really, this is a
that's
hypothetical
all I can
situation
say.
that we're trying to solve here that I don't think we'll ever solve because, you know, there's two different views in it. Really, I'm like Ferris, I wasn't satisfied and still not satisfied with the way it took place. I think if we was to say, you know, write a check to whatever, and you thought it wouldn't, you shouldn't do it, I don't think you, to relieve your responsibility, only thing you'd have to do is just vote against it and have it on record, and then that would relieve all of your responsibility to your CPA.
Well, and if you'll recall, I did ask our attorney at QTAC Rock that question, and he advised that I get an opinion from my professional board of certification, which is what I tried to do. And so I think I did every step that y'all asked me to do along the way, and I acted in what I believed was in my fiduciary capacity to the members of this fund.
Well, okay, and that's what I'm saying, we'll never solve it to the satisfaction of everybody
What?
here today.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Are you finished with your statement? I don't want to cut you
Well,
off.
I mean, and here's the thing about it, I mean, I feel like our recourse is just like, I mean, if you do it again, we don't like it, but we can take you to court.
Well, he cut me off in my statement, so I'd like
Just
to
a minute.
finish my statement.
Oh, sorry.
And in response to your question as to what I wanted to do.
I have a question first. And that is, Sarah is an employee of the City of Little Rock, and as an employee of the City of Little Rock, she sits on this board. And I would say anything, that any punishment or anything you want to ask Sarah to do should go through the city of Little Rock before you take one of our city employees to task on something.
Well, Ms. Adcock, she is a city employee of the city of Little Rock, and if she violated the rules of the city of Little Rock, that's exactly correct, but she didn't violate the rules of the city of Little Rock, she violated the rules of this board.
No, because she is sitting in this board as an employee of the city of Little Rock.
Well, and if you'll recall, that's one of the issues that our attorney said. I mean, in most cases, let's say this was any other board where I was not statutorily appointed to serve on this board, my option would have been to resign from the board. If I felt that strongly, I would just resign from the board, and then you could have another treasurer come in and make that payment. I don't legally have that option. I'm required by law to serve on this board, so that was one of the complicating factors.
I would like to finish what I started out to say, that in response to the question you asked me, is what I would like to do is to receive your assurances that your actions, as those actions were represented in the August 3rd email, will not occur again in the future. And that's all I would ask.
Hey, Lee?
I'm kind of like Don and Ferris, I don't know about Rusty, but I'm ready to move on with this. If this happens again, we'll cross that bridge down the road.
Well, I don't see that that's something that we can move on with, because this is a
Let me get
requirement
in
of
line to
Robert's
speak
Rule
on
of
this
Law.
one last time. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yes, sir. Okay, so Lee, you've made your statement. Ferris, you're recognized.
You know, I was gonna mention, but this is, you know, if we wanna quote people in the minutes from the last meeting, this was a quote. Members can remember and guess who made it. We're no longer projected insolvent. So far as I'm concerned, this issue can be laid to rest. Do we know who said that in the last meeting?
Yeah, I did.
Discussing it, you did. And I agree with you. This issue needs to be laid to rest. I'm tired, quite frankly, and you can put this in the record, I'm tired of fussing and feuding over absolutely everything that comes down the pipe. I'm ready to move on to business. Our fund, our members need benefit increase of some sort. We're working on that. Our fund, longer term, needs to be merged with LAFI, and to me, that's what's important. This thing is not important because we can address it if it ever comes up, which it hasn't in the last 25 years. That's
Okay.
all I have to say.
Okay, well, I'd like to address your point, that while this issue has never come up in the last 25 years, doesn't mean that it can't come up in the future. And if we could address it and still preserve our membership's rights and get them payments as they are required of their funds, then I wouldn't have any problem with it at all. However, if the city were to choose to take the action that she took in her August 3rd email and would refuse those payments, the only thing we could do, well, we could go to court and get an injunction or attempt to obtain an injunction. But the court, the city would have the right to appeal it. And it could take months to decide, if not years to decide. And so therefore, to my way of thinking, the availability of that, if Ms. Linehan is not even willing to provide us with her assurance that this won't happen in the future, and this board is willing to accept that,
The only assurance that I can give is that I will act in a fiduciary capacity to the members of this fund in accordance with my responsibilities as treasurer to this fund. I can't guarantee you I'm gonna do anything you might dream up. I mean, I can't make that guarantee. I can guarantee you that I'm gonna act in a fiduciary responsibility to the members of this fund.
we've had a fiduciary responsibility to the members of this fund to obey the Arkansas law, and that's something that you need to do.
I'll make a motion to move on to item 12.
Second.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
I hate to ask this, but today is my birthday, and my husband is going to fix lunch for me. I do have one thing under other business, and I do that.
Yes, we can move to item.
And that I would publicly like to thank Steve for his wonderful email and his posting on the page of the board concerning me. I really appreciate it. I think it was probably one of the nicest things I ever read about myself. And I sent it to several people that I thought would enjoy it. And I just want to live up to what you expect of me and what this board expects of me. And as I told you when I spoke to your membership, the only thing I have to give is me. And that is what I want to give, is any help I can to make sure that the missions of this board is carried out and that we address the needs of the people who serve the city.
Well, I'd like to respond to that statement and tell her that the only reason I wrote that article was because I truly believed what I wrote. If I hadn't believed it, it would have never been written. I think anyone in here will attest to the fact that I'm one who expresses my opinions to the fullest.
And the more I get to know you, the more I appreciate that, because I know that it came from your heart that you meant it, that you would not have said it if you didn't mean it. That's true.
Before Director Adcock leaves, I do want to wish her on behalf of the board a very happy birthday, and thank you for spending your birthday morning with us. We are quite honored by your presence, and we do appreciate everything you're doing for this fund.
We're not going to ask your age for the record either.
My age is 72, and I am very, very proud of it. So,
Well, happy birthday.
I have lived every one of the years, and I expect to live many, many more. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You are a survivor.
And I hope you have a good day.
Thank you. I'm having problems with my leg today, so. Oh, no, once I stand it up and it gets oiled up and ready to go, it'll go for the whole day.
Thank you very much.
I'm still under old business.
Okay, well, other business, yes. Is there any other business, and then we'll move back?
I got a question about the audit of the beneficiaries. Was that presented to the firemen?
Yes, that was presented to the Fireman's Pension Fund, and I believe, okay, help me get this right. They asked, what did they ask? There's a follow-up from there. They first of all, are very interested and likely very supportive. They did ask for a follow-up from the city attorney representative, and do you remember what the specific question was?
Just to review the contract.
The contract, yeah, the proposed contract, and to see too, like, let's say, one of the items they want to follow up on, let's say they missed something, and the fund expended a benefit. Would there be any recourse or anything like that? So they were asking the city attorney representative on the fund to review the contract, to provide a report at the next meeting, but they were very interested, very supportive of the idea. So they were just waiting on a report at the next meeting, and then I think we'll be able to.
So at the next meeting, they'll make the decision. Was there any other widows filing their pension paperwork last month?
For police?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. We had,
Nobody's responded to the stuff you mailed out to them?
I didn't mail out.
Was the benefit for benefit? payments?
Oh,
The
yes.
widow's affidavit?
Yes, they did. They
Oh,
called,
yes.
and, yeah, I did pay, the one in
Armstrong.
Branson.
Ms. Armstrong.
Yes, I did pay her.
Voting.
And then I have another one that I've sent another affidavit to, because she's inquiring about her check, so I still have it.
Who's that?
Maxie's wife.
Okay.
Uh, Yeah, and I think I have one more check.
But wasn't Claudine's returned again to you?
Well, that was her direct deposit advice. So, they failed to give me a lot number or something, apartment number or something. I did mail it back out. But,
Okay.
yes, I am working on that still.
All right.
Legislation.
Wait.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. I-
No, this
I
was just,
disrupted. I'm sorry.
while we're still in other business, I did go check, since there's gonna be several here for next month's meeting. I was hoping we could move to the boardroom, but it's already reserved, so we will have to go ahead and have the meeting in here. But what do y'all think? I mean, it's already 11:15, and there's still gonna be several people for next month about catering lunch in.
Well, I don't know, we'll have to see if you know, we need to see how much time the city manager will have allotted too. I mean, I don't know if he can, I mean, I don't know if y'all,
That's fine with me if that's what we need to do. Have a lot of people here.
Okay, what, cater lunch?
City manager gets that.
Sounds good.
Yep. He does, doesn't he? He eats.
Can, if we're
Roger,
through,
is there any other business?
just one other
Said you
thing.
get a-
Okay.
And if this applies to Roger, and I'm not mentioning this for any kind of decision,
coming.
I'm just mentioning it to be thinking about.
Okay.
Board members be thinking about, Roger. You know, some funds around the state have, I think, correct on this, got legislation been changed to allow them, through an actuarial valuation, to not prohibit widows from remarrying. This fund, as an example, I doubt it would cost the fund 1 penny. In the 25 years that I've been on the board, I think only one widow in all those 25 years has actually said, take me off the pension rolls because I'm remarried. So the reason I'm bringing this up is to be thinking about if we want to offer some kind of legislative, or if we want to take steps, and Roger, if you would look at the legislation, to allow widows to remarry if they choose to do so, because it's going to cost this fund virtually nothing. If I were a widow, that's a long shot. But
You gonna leave us there?
this is kind of like if I were you, but if I were a widow, you know, I might want to get remarried if I lost my husband at some point in time. And I don't think that's unreasonable or illogical.
To take the benefit away from them.
Oh,
Well,
okay,
I
thank
agree
you.
with you on that, because just them getting married, having,
What time do they have?
taken care of all the crap they've had to put up
Did they
with,
say what time they have
with
this?
us in that 20 years. You know, so I agree with you.
Yeah. I did have one contact me last year, year before, that was thinking on getting married. She was still fighting the issue.
She never did though, did
But-
she? She had,
She signed her affidavit.
Okay, guys, can we move rather quickly, though? We do have some people outside that evidently had reserved this room for 11. So, does that conclude the other business?
Just one little point I want to
Okay.
point out, and this, not to be laboring on this before, but I noticed that we paid out in 2011, $7 million for benefits. I noticed Jody, 2011, he said we paid out $7,800,000.
Well, if you take that 7 million and you add the drop, he's probably looking at the two together.
Well, no, he's got over here, he's got drop payouts.
Oh, okay. I wonder if he's including any of this.
I don't know, he's got 7,800,000. He's got drop payouts of 3 million.
Okay, well, we'll look.
That's his one.
Okay. Anything, all right, does that conclude other business? Were there any other board member topics of discussion? Can we postpone those potentially to the next meeting if there are?
Make a motion with there.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's get out of here.
Okay, and remember, our next meeting will be on the third Thursday, which will be March 15th.
I will probably, I had something already
Steve.
scheduled for that Thursday out of town.
Steve.
so I may not be
Okay.
able to.
Steve,
I'm not coming.
Excuse
do you want me
me.
to turn this?
I will go, Roger.